The following podcast is scheduled for one recording with no time limit. Making their way down to somewhere in the ring, Andrew Sanford and Ryan Sprague.
That was pretty good. I was singing it and I was like trying to be silly, and then I was like, no, I think that's pretty much what it sounds like. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Somewhere in the Ring. I am Andrew Sanford, joined as always by my good buddy Ryan Sprague, and we are here to talk about wrestling. And we have a really fun episode today. Our WrestleMania is in the books. We've moved on. And today is our first interview episode. Last episode, we had our first guest. This episode, we have our guest, guest host. And then this week, we have our first guest that Ryan interviewed, the Ragin Cajun himself, Lash LeRoux.
Yeah, man. Crazy. This is what I find so interesting. These worlds of podcasting are so small. Like, the reason I interviewed Lash LeRoux was actually Somewhere in the Skies, because he is an avid UFO enthusiast as well. And when I contacted him, I said, hey, do you want to come talk about UFOs? And he was like, yeah, sure. And then when I actually got him on for the interview you're going to hear and see later, I was like, can we also talk wrestling? And he was like, I knew it. I knew you were going to ask that. So what you're going to hear today is the wrestling portion of that interview.
And a little UFO stuff. There's a little UFO stuff in there.
Oh, is there?
Well, yes, there is. Yeah,
it's been a while since I've actually gone back and listened to it.
It's a great interview. We're excited for everybody to hear it. We do have a little news to get out of the way first. First of all, we have some new Patreon subscribers who we love very dearly right here on the old diaper podium. We've got John K. and Paul K. We are 1K short of a hate group. So please, no one else with the last name that starts with K, join the group, or else my podium is going to look not as good as I would like it to.
We will be canceled before episode 7.
Ooh, yeah. It's a real Krusty's comedy cavalcade situation. But thank you, John. Thank you, Paul. And if you want to have your name on a white piece of paper and also other good things, please head to Somewhere in the Ring, patreon.com/Somewhere in the Ring. Ryan's got it on the screen right now. And join up. Yeah. Service guarantees citizenship. I don't know. I heard join up, but I went to Starship Troopers mode. Anyway, and
I had to.
That's fair. So yeah, let's get right to. I don't want to keep people from Lash LeRoux too long, but we do have some news items to cover. Some fun stuff. Now, just so everybody knows, this is released on a Wednesday, but we're recording it a little bit earlier because Ryan's got some travel time coming up. So we are in a post SmackDown pre-Raw world. So we are Sheamus making his WWE return, which is apparently was announced to be happening this Monday or this past Monday, if you're listening to this in the future, which all of you will be. But there was some fun stuff that happened on SmackDown. We'll get to that. But first, let's get to the big news of the week. AEW decided to air a nothing burger of footage that basically just corroborates what CM Punk said in his MMA Hour interview, and they made a real big deal out of it, and then tried to make a story out of it. And now there's even rumors that and by rumors, I know how that we all know how the Young Bucks work. Now it's out there that they never wanted to do this, because it failed miserably. It failed. Come on. If they didn't want to do it, they didn't have to do it. I'm not buying that for a second. I'm
sorry, Andrew. If you're going to show this explosive stuff, are you really going to do it in a broom closet with a chalkboard in the background?
The whole thing was so strange.
And here's the other thing. I'll just mention this. There's live footage of people that were at Dynamite that recorded this as it was happening. And what was the most prevalent thing you could hear coming from the audience? CM Punk, See, oh my god, man,
so dumb.
And someone just yells, "This sucks."
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. I really don't. Like it's bad business. It's bad business. It put the spotlight on somebody who's not even in the company anymore. Like it's just. Yeah, silly stuff.
You know, Tony Khan bragged about the ratings that night, and good for you, man. You got good ratings for one night of Dynamite for like 3 minutes of this. And I mean, the other big thing too was Punk responded in his fun CM Punk. I love this guy now. I am completely
I love that.
On the Punk train. Yeah. Did you see that tweet or post he put up?
I think it was on his Instagram story, right?
Okay.
He did the George Bush mission accomplished. Good
job, guys.
Oh, so good.
He's still making AEW ratings, even not being in the company.
It's absurd stuff. And the whole thing, and it wasn't even the only moment of the night where they felt the need to talk to somebody who isn't talking to them at all. We had Will Ospreay.
Yeah.
Ospreay. Apologies. I'm not meaning to mispronounce his name. He's a human being. He cut a promo where he's taking shots at Triple H, even though Triple H never mentioned his name. And like, look, we're all adults here. I think you could probably insinuate like maybe Triple H was talking about him, maybe he wasn't, but and let's be frank, he probably was, but they do it in a way that's like not addressing him directly. He did not. He said, I think we have the quote here from Triple H. Said, "When I see people that come out of trying to make it and then they pick the job where they go, well, they work less, the schedule is lighter, all right, then I'm glad I didn't get you, because if you're not in it for the grind at that point earlier in your career, you have no business being here." And look, I both get and don't get. Like, I think I get what he's saying from his business standpoint. They want people who are going to want to give their all right away when they're earlier on in a company. I will say that somebody like Will Ospreay, which is probably why he shouldn't have responded to this, I don't know if that applies to him. I don't even know if he would have been somebody that had to grind when he gets to depth. He's a name. He probably would have got a pretty good spot. Maybe not. Maybe that was part of the negotiations and they were like, no, we want you to do house shows and we want you to do these things. So I think you could argue either way that maybe Triple H wasn't even talking about him, but he decided to respond, calling him out specifically, saying, Will Ospreay gets on Dynamite and says, "I am delivering some of the best professional wrestling matches this world has ever seen, bruv. Normally, I wouldn't rise to this type of bait, but seeing as the guy who said it is only in the position he's in because he was grinding on the boss's daughter, you are in no position to tell me that what the grind is all about, my friend, because you have no idea what I fight for. So let this be a painful little jab back and a gentle reminder that you do not throw stones at an assassin with a machine gun." I don't know why an assassin would use a machine gun unless they decided to get busted afterwards. But that's a nitpick. That's just a little, maybe look at the script a little bit more before you say things, because it doesn't make any sense. But it's also to not only respond, but to try to make it personal is just silly. It is childish amateur stuff. And the whole Edge, I think we have it on the notes here as well. Like Adam Copeland had said that because he had been on Dynamite the week before, basically the week of WrestleMania, the week of the CM Punk interview, kind of given a pep talk, and he's described it as such to the locker room. And his idea was more of a, don't even worry about them. We're going to do us. We're going to keep doing what we do, which is the way to do things. And then it seemed like the next week they just threw all that out the window, which is dumb. And it's a little embarrassing. The Ospreay stuff, like, I get it. He was mad. And they want to build off of this heat, but I don't know.
Sorry, dude. You don't go after someone's wife though. Like,
yeah, that
is such a low blow, bruv. Do you know how often I hear that outside the bars in Scotland? These like hooligans who are drinking at 10 a.m., getting out of soccer games, coming outside and being like, hey, bruv, hey, bruv.
It's
I get it.
Football games, right?
Football. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm
Yeah.
To all of our UK listeners.
Yeah,
and
I think you're gonna get.
so
I think
sorry.
that's how you get your green card taken away.
Oh God.
But but no, it was just silly. The whole thing, it felt childish. Every aspect felt childish, amateurish. It felt very late stage WCW. It's embarrassing. It's like I'm breathing in secondhand embarrassment at this point. Like that's how strong it is. So
yep. We'll see what happens next with their ratings. I see a plummet yet again, which sucks because they have all these awesome new talented wrestlers, and now they're gonna get caught up in one man's desire to like hit back, and that being Tony Khan, in my opinion, like the childish.
Oh, 100%. Oh, there is nothing that makes him look more like just it makes the whole thing look like a billionaire and his playthings. Like in his toy box. Like it doesn't feel like a business. And that's what CM Punk said. You cannot have him say something like that about you and be like, oh, you're going to say I'm not a businessman? Allow me to prove that to you on national television. Absurd stuff. Absurd.
Terrible. What's our last news story?
Well, this one, I believe you are a little bit more heated about than I am. So I'm a little interested about this.
All right.
So it's okay. So the rumor came out that, and this was reported by Dave Meltzer, that Stone Cold Steve Austin was indeed supposed to be the person that came out during the big Cody and Roman match instead of The Undertaker. It would have made more sense. It would have been more memorable, all these different things. But apparently WWE could not reach a financial agreement with him. So Ryan, I want you to speak to this first. How did you react to this news?
I told you so. I'm just kidding, bruv. I'm just kidding, bruv. I'm gonna slip into my my bro soon too.
There you go.
No, it was painfully obvious, I think, to everyone watching at home, everyone in the arena. Like the gong hit, and just you could feel the air get sucked out of the room. Yes, there was a big pop. Like it's the Undertaker. There will always be a pop, but everyone was expecting Austin. It made perfect sense for him to go up against The Rock, and all he had to do was come out there, hit a stunner, drink a beer, and leave. So I'm of two minds here, and I want to get your opinion on it too. Like, I understand it's a business. I understand money is at the heart of all of sports entertainment at the end of the day. But come on, man. Like, you couldn't come out, do one stunner, and bounce, like, knowing how it's WrestleMania 40. Like, I know he was just in, 2 WrestleManias ago, really put over Kevin Owens, which was great. But I would literally pluck Austin out of that WrestleMania, nothing against Kevin Owens, and put him in this final moment in WrestleMania 40. And the fact that it came down to money, I hate hearing that. I absolutely hate hearing that. But I also understand Stone Cold is a businessman and he knows his worth. So this just sucks. It sucks all around knowing what could have been, for me, a perfect WrestleMania had Austin showed up.
I think if it comes down to money, I blame WWE in this case.
Okay.
I put it there because it's like, look, throw the bag at him. He knows how big this is going to be. It's just like you said, he knows his worth. Like you also said, it's WrestleMania 40. You are now owned by TKO. You have money. You have money to spare.
Endless.
Just give him whatever he wants. Endless. Give him whatever he wants. I like it, that. I think that's what it came down to for me. Is it's just like at the end of the day, Stone Cold gets nothing out of it, if not for the money. You know what I mean? It's not going to raise his profile. It's not going to give him like a second coming because he's not a full-time wrestler anymore. It's not going to. It only helps them.
Good point.
And I think if that's the case, which it is, you got to throw the bag. Give him whatever he wants, even if he's only there for 2 seconds. Like, it's just, and it's not even, it goes beyond to just like his connection to The Rock. Like, it would have been a one in a number of classic, like Stone Cold coming in to be the deciding factor kind of moments. Like, it is a classic. It would have been a classic on a classic on a classic, only because of him. But he's perfectly happy to be at his farm, and if that's the case, give him all the money. Give him all the money. Okay. I like, you know, I get it, but it ended up being one of the highest streamed events on Peacock anyway. It ended up like breaking all these records. They had an incredible gate. Just give it to him. You've got it.
You have it.
Give him what he wants.
Now that you mention it, I think you're right. The blame is completely on the WWE. That no number would be too high, I believe, for them to have thrown at him to do it. And he's smart. Like, he knows, you know, I'm not asking for $10 billion, but it clearly was an amount they weren't willing to spend. And I think the end of that match suffered greatly because of it, unfortunately. But you know what? End of the day, Cody won. We got what we wanted. So let's move on. Let's see what happens now. The story, one story ended, another is just starting, you know, as they've been telling us since Cody won. So whatever. Good for you, Austin. Enjoy your farm and your beer and your dogs. And
he loves that beer.
Maybe we'll see him at WrestleMania 50 in a wheelchair. Let's move to SmackDown quick, man.
Woo!
Yeah,
SmackDown's pretty exciting.
It was a good one. I was very impressed. Yeah. So I guess the main thing, this was SmackDown from April 12th. Again, if you're listening to this, we won't be covering Raw, unfortunately, from this past Monday because we are recording prior to it. But SmackDown April 12th, we had a Braun Breaker debut, in a sense. I think he's been on before, but I think he's been on before, but this was like I think he officially had his like last NXT this past week. And then he came out on SmackDown, new theme music, so it's more like official now. It's just like, all right, only SmackDown for this guy from this point forward. And pardon me, it's really exciting. He's one of the best talents right now, a generational talent, and he is exciting to watch. And I'm intrigued by what they will do with him next, because he feels like one of those people who could already be ready to be in a world title picture. You know, maybe not like popularity wise just yet. So that I feel like they need to build more of a fan base for him, probably have him put on some good matches, have some good feuds. But the ability is there. He's great. Braun Breaker is very, very good. So I'm excited to see where this goes next. Yeah, he's fantastic. And there's a very heartfelt video out there of him and Shawn Michaels and Braun thanking him. So go check that out, guys. It's on Instagram and stuff. I think that was probably after his last NXT appearance.
I believe so.
Yeah. Yep. I can't wait to see what he does next. This was interesting. I'll go to the main event before we get to kind of the big thing that happened, I guess. But we had a triple threat match between Mysterio, Kevin Owens, and AJ Styles. And this was to determine who will face Cody Rhodes for the undisputed championship.
And there were two. Yeah, and there were two triple threat matches.
The one before it was who was that?
It was I believe it was Lashley, Santos Escobar, and what's his LA Knight.
Oh, LA Knight. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it was going to be the winner of those two matches are going to face each other next SmackDown to see who is Cody's first challenger. Right now, feet to the fire. Who do you think is going to be?
Let's see. To face Cody in France.
Yeah.
LA Knight.
You think it's going to be LA Knight?
I think, again, I can almost tell by the way the commentators are pushing him again. I think we're seeing another wave for LA Knight, especially after his win at WrestleMania. Like for me, it only makes sense that that win at WrestleMania would then lead to an actual chance at the big belt. So I would like to see it be LA Knight. I'm a big LA Knight fan.
I think it's going to be AJ Styles.
Okay.
Only because I think I obviously neither one is going to beat Cody at Backlash. And I think if you have LA Knight lose at Backlash, it kind of kills his momentum a little bit. I could be wrong about that. I could still see a world where they just have a very good match and it's a face versus face. You know, they have a good time, like, or they really show up and, you know, there's some mutual respect at the end and all that good jazz. But I see more value. I think AJ Styles can absorb the loss a little bit more easily.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does. I mean, he's been a champion before.
Right.
So he's taken this journey. He knows how to deal with it. I do agree with that.
Yeah. But we'll see. What I like about both those choices is that I could see either one facing Cody, and at the very least, it'll be a very good match. So that's exciting.
I love this program with LA Knight and AJ. Like I could keep watching that.
Yeah.
So again, and neither of them are really heels or baby faces, which I like too. Like I'm rooting for both of them in a sense.
Yeah, it's interesting too because I remember Styles saying, because he came out to new music at WrestleMania, and it was the implication, or not even implication. He was just like, I love my old theme music, but I'm not doing right now what that theme music represents. So I think we might see him lean into a little bit more heel stuff.
I could see.
Attacking LA Knight at Elimination Chamber was certainly a heel move. So
true. Flying to another continent to beat the crap out of someone. I guess you're right.
Yeah. So so we'll see. I'm intrigued. I'm excited, and I think we could end up getting a really good, at the very least, we're going to get a really good match between LA Knight and AJ Styles next Friday on SmackDown. So
that's all I care about, man.
Yeah.
That's all I care about. Kind of the last big thing at SmackDown, we had kind of another splinter in the bloodline story.
Yeah.
Do you wanna tell us a little about that? Yeah.
Absolutely. So long story short, Solo Sikoa is taking the reins of the bloodline right now. He kicked out Jimmy Uso because he lost at WrestleMania. And he had, let me make sure I'm getting this right, Tama Tonga come in, who is Haku's son. And while he is not directly related, there's just like, you know, he was like a brother to to Rikishi and stuff. Like they basically consider him part of the family. But Tama Tonga, having made a big name already in Japan wrestling, like he's there, people were very excited about him coming. And what's interesting is he just signed a contract, and I think he might have even signed one after Jacob Fatu. So I'm intrigued by if we might see him show up sooner rather than later as well, because I don't know if you've seen any clips of that guy wrestling. Holy cow, is he incredible. And he's a big dude who moves and does backflips and does all kind of crazy stuff. So I think we'll start to see more of a formulation of like Solo's bloodline. And what's fun is we might even eventually see like a face Uso brothers and Roman Reigns reunion, you know, like we could even end up seeing like a bloodline versus bloodline match eventually. Who knows? It was really exciting. Paul Heyman sold the hell out of it. And then he even tried to call Roman Reigns, and Solo Sikoa took his phone and like smashed it. And I was just like, okay. I love Solo. I'm really psyched to see him get this kind of push.
Yeah, it's needed. He's fantastic. I love him. They tried with John Cena and it failed miserably for him to put him over. And it's just, I do like Solo. I really do.
I do too. I think that was more of a, what's tough there too is it's just, Cena has some ring rust currently. I think he's even admitted it himself. And I believe he left that match with Solo with some injuries too. So it just kind of, So I think they once they start moving him into more of a main program and doing some stuff like this, I think the return is going to be worth it.
Yep. Can't wait. Can't wait. We are still in the 4th inning, I'm going to say, or as Paul Heyman would say, of the Bloodline story. When I thought it was probably done, he's done it again. The bastard. He's done it again. So
Pretty
I can't
great.
wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait, brother. Hey, I can't wait to get to our interview. Should we give a little bio for our guest this week?
Oh, absolutely.
Cool.
Let me see. And appeared in the company until 2004. After retiring from pro wrestling, he became a full-time cartoonist, having been featured in Pro Wrestling Illustrated and The Wrestler. During his tenure in WCW, he drew a series of single-paneled comics for WCW magazine called Lashing Out. And you can find his work and commissions at toonheads.com. That's heads with a Z, TOONHEADZ.com. And check it out. He is fantastic.
Yeah.
Very talented gentleman. The interview is so much fun. He's such a kind, humble guy. And I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit more in a second. But ladies and gentlemen, this is Ryan and Lash LeRoux.
I'm gonna commentate. Hey, go to commercial break. Commercial break. Commercial break. Go to commercial break.
This episode is brought to you by Absurd by Design. Artist Miguel Romero brings your imagination to life with custom artwork in his meticulous and unique style. You don't have to look any further than the brilliant podcast logo art right here for Somewhere in the Ring. We could not be more satisfied and inspired with what Miguel created for our podcast. So, whether it's book covers, promotional ads, special gifts, or even podcast logos, Miguel works with you directly to create a piece of art for any occasion or project. Commissions are now open, so be sure to check out his work and get Absurd by Design. Visit absurdbydesign.wordpress.com or click the link in the show notes. Thank you again to Absurd by Design.
Hey, thank you for having me, Ryan. Man, it's a pleasure and an honor.
Let's not waste any time, brother.
Awesome.
I don't want to take up too much of your afternoon. Let's start with the question you probably the one you get all the time, brother. The one you get all the time. How did it all start for you? When did you realize you wanted to be a professional wrestler? And what was that moment like when you finally were going, I'm doing this. I'm going to become a professional wrestler. Give us the origin story if you don't mind.
It was completely by accident and happenstance. And I say that because of this. I grew up a huge wrestling fan. I heard your intro there, Ryan. So I know that you could probably relate to just being a kid and enjoying it and watching it and you get caught up in the drama of it. And never in a million years did I think this is something I could see myself doing in the future. And to make it as quick and concise as I possibly can, I grew up extremely poor here in Alabama. My mama raised 5 kids and she quit school in the 8th grade. So I began working at a very young age. I was 9 years old when I had my first job. And through high school, I played sports. I played football and did wrestling in high school, amateur wrestling, and won state championships in both of those and was a decent enough athlete, but was less of an all-star athlete, just more of an overachiever because I had to be based on the background that I came from. And I worked my junior and senior year of high school all the time because I was homeless my junior and senior year of high school. I was on my own by then. And because I had worked all through high school and from the time, I hit 7th grade on, I had full-time jobs on top of school, that I really didn't have time to watch wrestling like I did when I was a kid. And at the exact same time, we're talking early 90s. So for those people who are wrestling fans, there's a little lull in the business anyway. It had its big run in the 80s with Hulkamania, and then it kind of eased off a little bit and slowed down. So those things coincided with each other. What also coincided with each other was as I entered college and started going to school, I had more time. My life got a little more stable, and I wasn't working quite as much and was growing into adulthood. And as I'm going to college courses, I'm having time now to watch wrestling a little bit again. It catches me because now we're talking late 90s and the NWO has just hit. Hogan has just made that epic heel turn at Bash at the Beach and joined the NWO and began leading them. And now business is exploding with the big competition between WCW and WWE. WCW, of course, having Monday Nitro, WWE having Monday Night Raw, and thus the ratings wars begin. And with that explosion of business came WCW now having a training school called the WCW Power Plant. And business was so good that they would have these commercials on Nitro and on Thunder and on their TV shows for open tryouts at the WCW Power Plant. And that was in Atlanta, Georgia, is where WCW is based out of. So on a whim, man, I'm going, you know what? I'm 19 years old, 18 years old. I'm right out of high school. You only had to be 18 years old, pass a physical, and be at least 200 pounds, at least, 5'10" or whatever. And I thought, man, I can check all those boxes. And what a great story to tell my friends. I don't think I'm ever going to make it, but what if I go over here to a tryout and I meet Sting or I meet Hogan or I meet Ric Flair and I just shake their hands and I've got this great story to tell my buddies, right, that I went and did this adventure. And when I went to this WCW open tryout at the Power Plant, there's 24 guys in this tryout class. It's a 3-day tryout class. 24 guys, and it's guys from that running the gambit of bikers that just have tattoos and mohawks and think they have the look, to bodybuilders who have these phenomenal physiques, to 290-pound athletes that were great college football players but not quite good enough for the NFL, to everything in between. And man, I'm a runt. I'm right out of high school. I'm a small guy that's just an underachiever. And right away, this guy walks in to start it off that they called Sarge. And this guy was a drill sergeant in the Coast Guard. And the first thing he says is just grab a bucket. Grab a bucket? What do you mean grab? Yeah, grab a bucket. So you got these 5-gallon buckets on the side there up against the wall, and you flip them over, the big paint buckets. And you're just doing free Hindu squats, just squats with no weight, just going down, touching the bucket, going down, touching the bucket, coming up, hundreds at a time, right? And so needless to say, very quickly, almost like, boot camp or Navy SEALs going through BUD/S training, they're right away weaning out the riffraff. And you had people whose legs were literally locking up with cramps that couldn't do it anymore, or people that's thinking this is not what I signed up for. Guys who thought that they were just going to show up and have the look, and WCW is going to say, oh, wow, you look like a star. We're going to make you a star. And when I realized that was the lay of the land, I looked around, man, and I thought to myself, I went from being the underdog to now having the advantage because I had been through some stuff by that point in my life, right? I had faced adversity. And if this is a heart check and a gut check, then you might run me off, but I'm not going to quit. So I went from thinking that I'm the smallest guy here to I've got the advantage because this is about heart. And that's exactly what the trainers would say. Like, look, you called us. We didn't call you. We've got plenty of talent out there that we're putting on television. That's not the issue. So at the end of the first day, very quickly, at the end of the first day, you went from 24 guys to about 16. The next day, you had about 8 guys that showed up. And then the last day, everyone had quit except for me and one other guy. And even then, they don't guarantee you'll ever have a job. They bring you into an office and they say, look, you showed us enough to make us believe that you have what it takes to be a professional wrestler. If you want to pay us to train you, then we'll allow you to train here at the power plant. We're not promising you'll ever have a job. We're not guaranteeing you a contract. We're not saying you'll ever appear on television. We're just saying you showed us enough. You can pay us $3,000. We'll train you to be a wrestler. And my mind thought, well, this looks like a door opening up in my life. And if I really believe in myself and I want to bet on myself and invest in myself, you pay for any training you get in this world. And this is the Harvard of professional wrestling at the time. So I paid them the $1,500, which was all I had in my savings. And the rest of it I worked off at CNN Center, which Ted Turner also owned. And I just moved furniture around, man. And I drove back and forth 2 hours there, 2 hours back, 5 days a week, 10 hours a day of training every single day for about a year before I finally got a shot. And when I did, I made the most of it. And it just blew up from there.
Wow. What a journey, man. I love hearing how wrestlers got into it. And, I know a lot of people who may not be familiar with the business. They've probably seen the movie The Wrestler and they're like, wow, like that seems pretty rough.
Yeah.
But for a lot of you guys, that was the reality. You know, you're living out of cars. You're going from gig
Oh,
to gig.
absolutely. I'll be honest with you. People ask me all the time, especially when that movie first came out, what I thought of it. And I hated the movie. I hated the movie because it was too realistic. Mickey Rourke did such a great job for a lot of these guys that, you know, you have some great money making years through there. But to be honest with you, even if you make it to the top, you better be very, very smart from a business standpoint, because you're going to have a run more likely than not. Even if you make a name for yourself, and you're not going to have any retirement, you're not going to have any kind of benefits, nothing like that. So, and most of those guys are superstars. So even if they're making $1 million a year, they're probably living like they're making $5 million a year. So at the end of their run, and you think that's going to last forever, you don't have a whole lot to fall back on, and you wind up being like that character in the movie where, man, you're just trying to hold on to that name, and that's all the identity that you have, man. And you need to roar the fans, and if they're not responding, then you're fulfilled. And so these guys wind up just being journeymen for the rest of their lives, just trying to relive a little bit of that magic that they knew at their peak and at their prime.
Right, exactly. Well, let's talk about that, Lash. So you work your way up. I know, you know, it's grueling working these house shows and training and doing everything you can to claw your way up to getting on television. And eventually you did. You made your way in WCW onto television. I gotta ask, what was that first televised event like? Knowing that right in that moment, that match, that you're going to have, like, I mean, we're talking, this is pinnacle time for, you know, Monday Night Wars and everything, that you were going to be seen by millions of people. What was that moment like for your first televised match? I got to ask.
Well, to do it justice there, Ryan, and really lay the land a little bit for you, you're talking about a 3-tier hierarchy, because first of all, what you have is my very first debut. And my very first debut also happened to be my first wrestling match. I had some opportunities to do some indie matches in some smaller shows. And my mentality was, man, I'm after this WCW dream. I'm chasing this dream. And I don't want to have a match until I can go out on WCW TV and have a match without embarrassing myself, right? And look like I belong. In WCW at the time, if you were training at the power plant, the Saturday night show that was popular at the time, that was syndicated, was filmed. They would film several months in advance in Orlando studios. So you could drive down to Orlando studios if you were a trainee, be there for the 5 days of TV tapings, and go in and let the bookers know, or the powers that be know, that, hey, I'm here. I'm from the power plant. I'm training, and if you need an extra enhancement guy or somebody to make someone look good, I've got my gear with me and I'm ready to work. And often you could get an opportunity to doing that. So my first ever was against a wrestler by the name of Perry Saturn. And it was on that Saturday night show. And Perry and I had about a 4-minute match, and it was just him killing me. That's all it was, right? And that very first match, to speak to exactly what you're saying, I didn't really think things through to what television felt like until I walked through that curtain. And suddenly I'm walking through that curtain. I've got no shirt on. I felt completely naked. I'm wearing wrestling tights. I literally wanted to walk out there like this, you know, and, you know, you just feel so self-conscious, and you feel like the world's watching you. That was more awkward than anything else. And it felt like a blur. It was so short. And it was so concise and condensed. And then not long after that, I began getting regular Saturday night matches. And simultaneously, the reason why I got my real shot in WCW and got a contract was because Lucha Libre became popular at the time. And you had these wrestlers from Mexico bringing in this cruiserweight style. And there was very few working guys that could do that high-flying style. It was basically me and Billy Kidman were the only two in WCW at the time, outside of these bona fide Lucha Libre Mexican wrestlers. And EA Sports had signed a deal with WCW to do the first ever wrestling video game where they used motion capture to get all the moves in, right? And so they come down to WCW Power Plant to figure out how we're going to film this thing, because this thing hasn't been done before. And EA Sports at the time was based in Vancouver. And they came down, and I'm not a small guy. I'm not a super big guy, but I'm not a small guy either. I'm about 6 foot, 230 pounds. And so I was big enough to do all the power moves. They wanted to see a gorilla press. They want to see a power slam. I'm a pretty strong guy. I could throw people up over my head. I could do the suplexes. I could do all the deal. And they filmed all that. And they're like, wow, that's exactly what we need. They said, well, we need who can show us some chain wrestling a la Dean Malenko or an Eddie Guerrero or those style guys. I go, well, I was an amateur wrestler in high school. I could do all that stuff, man. I could do the legit deal, and got in the ring and did some mat wrestling, and they were impressed by that. And well, who can the lucha libre style? Well, I can. I'm pretty athletic even for my size, and I can jump off the top rope and do hurricane ranas and head scissors and the whole deal and springboard off the top rope. And they're like, wow, this is a guy that we could film every wrestler's move with. We want him. And when WCW got word of that, their initial reaction was, man, use somebody that's interactive. We're already paying them. And EA Sports, to their credit, and to really to my credit too, I guess, I benefited from it. They said, look, we'll pay him if we have to. We'll pay Lee to come up here. This is how we feel about him doing the video game. And that put me on WCW's radar as somebody that was more than just some extra that they can use on a Saturday night show. And not long after that, they called me at the Power Plant on a Friday. I'll never forget it. And they'll say, Monday Nitro is live in Minneapolis. Billy Kidman's the Cruiserweight champion. We're trying to make him look like a strong fighting champion. Can you be at Monday Nitro on Monday night to wrestle Billy Kidman live for the Cruiserweight title? Absolutely. Of course I can. Are you kidding me? And so that was really the big break. And when I went out there and wrestled Billy Kidman, by that time, I had thought about the psychology of wrestling. I had slowly put together who I am from a persona standpoint. I had grown the sideburns, and I had an L and an L for my initials, and I would point those out when I came to the ring. And I was the Ragin Cajun. I put Ragin on one side of my tights and Cajun on the other, so that even if they didn't bill me as the Ragin Cajun, the commentators are going to see that play off of it. I'm throwing Mardi Gras beads out to the ring. So I developed a character without WC hitting this. They just expecting a shot with Billy, and not only did we have a match, and to his credit, he was so giving in that match and worked to make me look as good as I worked to make him look. And I did all the great in-between transitions, man, where I'm not just body slamming him and going to the top rope. I'm going to body slam him, look at the crowd, be arrogant, ooh-wee, go up to the top rope, and I'm going to milk it. And when they saw some character that was connecting with the fans along with a guy that was a capable wrestler, they didn't say a word to me. There was no meeting. There was no powwow. There were no, wow, you impressed us. They were like, good job, kid. And I went home, and then I started getting booking sheets in the mail and airline tickets. And suddenly I'm on the road and I'm traveling, and I'm not expected to be at the Power Plant anymore. I'm expected to be at every show.
Well, what I was going to mention, brother, is the psychology of wrestling. I don't think a lot of people really, grasp that concept that you're creating a character. You are essentially an actor. You're creating a backstory. You're creating, the journey that your quote unquote character is going to go on. And that essentially translates to the audience. And then it's a matter of getting them in the palm of your hand. It's not just pound a guy and win the match and that's it. Like, you're telling a story every time you go out there for a match. And I think that's what I love watching as a writer myself. I was a playwright in New York City for 20 something years. I love watching wrestling matches because they have the same arc of a play. You're introduced to the characters, you've got the obstacle, the resolution, and then it's everything in between that the audience really, that's where you guys, it's your job to keep the audience interested. So not only are you trying to remember these moves that you're doing for a match and what bumps to take and what moves to do, you're also thinking of the story you're telling. So what is that experience like, going into a match and knowing this is live, anything could happen, something could go wrong, but kind of also knowing, what you have to accomplish by the end of that match. What is that like?
It is a psychological smorgasbord. I was going to correct you, and you corrected yourself when you were talking, because when you first said, I don't know what that's like, and I thought, man, you do know what it's like, brother, because I know you to be a successful writer, and you're a storyteller, even whether it's your podcast or whether it's being a playwright and writing these stories and getting to know these characters. And when you are putting together something like that, well, every character has to be different, because if they were all the same, then there's nothing interesting about that. And you've got a protagonist and you've got an antagonist. So yes, you're right. You have to juggle all these realities at the exact same time, while simultaneously trying to be a great athlete that's protecting the other person you're wrestling, protecting yourself physically at the same time, and doing things that psychologically make sense to the story that you're trying to tell. All the while, you have to have an internal clock. You have to have an internal clock, because if you're doing live television and they say we need an 8-minute match, well, it cannot be 7 minutes and 59 seconds. It's got to be an 8-minute match. It can't be 9 minutes. It has to be 8 minutes, because otherwise you mess up the production of the entire show. You've done enough television to recognize that as well. So, those are all dynamics that fall into place, and you got to be able to put the pieces of that puzzle together. And the game has changed a little bit now. It tends to be a bit more scripted for all those reasons, and they want to have as much control as possible. But the true artist and the people I admired and the guys that I tried to emulate and be like, and the reason why Ric Flair was such a great person, a great wrestler, a great worker, is because he could go out and tell that story, and telling the story is the most important part. I often use the example, I could teach you, Ryan, how to throw what we call a working punch, a fake punch, an acting punch, or whatever you want to term it. I could teach that to you probably in 5 minutes. Throw it, make it look believable, and not hurt somebody. What I can't teach you in 5 minutes is how to throw that punch, or how to sell that punch, or how to deliver that punch, given where you are in the match. Because you could throw the exact same punch at the beginning of the match with, say, you and I may be eyeball to eyeball, and we're just staring each other down, and we're jaw jacking to try to build up the tension, and you go throw a punch, and maybe I just take it and I look at you, and then I come back. Or if we're in the middle of the match, you may hit me with that exact same punch. There's no difference, but now I'm staggering a little bit more, and I'm rocked, and I may come back with something, or I may not. You may hit me with that exact same punch towards the end of the match, and I sell it like I'm out cold. And that all depends on the psychology, the response from the fans who are live, and you don't ever know how they're going to respond. And you have to be able to feel that, be able to read the audience, and be able to implement that, all while dancing with that other opponent that's in the ring, to make sure that you have a good chemistry and are playing off of one another, so you're on the same page. We call it Shakespeare.
It's perfect. See, I mean, that makes so much sense, because even in the world of playwriting, we learn, and I learned this from the playwright David Mamet, and he always says, if you're going to use the F-bomb in a play, that thing's got to be earned. You can't walk in and the first line is a character saying, F you to this person. Like, you got to build up to that, man. It's got to be there. There can't be any other words that they can use in that moment other than the F word. So I love this idea of that a punch could be same punch could be different in the span of like a 5-minute match or something. That's brilliant. It is Shakespeare. It's storytelling at its finest.
Yeah. And a good example of that is early in my career, as a matter of fact, I try not to be very critical of the product today and what we see in wrestling today, because I never want to be that old guy who is past his prime and is sitting on the outskirts and looking in and saying, well, we did this different or we did that different. But if there's one thing that I would give advice on and encouragement on, is exactly what you're talking about. How many movies do you see now where they do just freely use that from the opening credits on, and rather than earning it? And what happens when you do that is not that you can't do it. It's just that it diminishes the impact of it, right? It diminishes the impact of your dialogue, and it diminishes the impact of the emotional response that's being given from your character that you're trying to write for. In the same way, in a wrestling match, I remember having a match pretty early on with Rey Mysterio Jr., and we're both in the match, and it's a house show. So these non-televised shows, they're not as strict with the time constraints, and you can go a little longer, and you've got more freedom. And man, we were killing it. And we're doing all these moves, and I always had great chemistry with Rey Mysterio Jr., who was such a phenomenal wrestler and athlete. We would just make up stuff in the ring. We may do a move that's not a real move that nobody's ever done before, but it made sense in the moment, and we were athletic enough to pull it off. And we'd have this great match, man. And when we do those big impact moves, we call those high spots. And so we'd had several high spots in the match like that to build up the climax. And we came back to the curtain, and the agent, the guy responsible for lack of a better way of putting it, directing and producing the show that night, was a guy by the name of Arn Anderson, a legendary wrestler in his own right, member of the old Four Horsemen, if you're a big wrestling fan, and just known for being a ring general and really understanding the psychology of the wrestling business. And the first thing he said to us when we came through, said, "That's a hell of a job, guys. Y'all did a great job. What an awesome match. But you didn't have to do half of what you did. You want to work harder, you want to work smart." Because we could have done half as much and gotten the same response depending on how we sell it and how we run through it emotionally. And that's the whole point, right? Is you're taking these fans on an emotional ride. And if you give them too much or you overdo that, then they don't have time to digest all that. In the same way that, if you're writing a play or you're producing a movie or you're just putting out transcribing dialogue, if it's too much and it's just rapid fire, there's no opportunity there for the fan or the person to be entertained, to really digest that and understand what's going on. You're moving too fast on to the next thing. So that's part of the psychology as well. And what I love about the wrestling product now, not to go off on a tangent or not to pull us away from wrestling into what you're so well known for, but what I love about the wrestling product now is you would have thought that, okay, the cat's out of the bag and what we used to term as kayfabe, which was keeping wrestling protected and believed being a real legitimate sport as opposed to entertainment. What we referred to as kayfabe, everyone always said, well, you'll kill the wrestling business once that's exposed. And really the opposite has happened. I think there's a greater appreciation because fans can actually kind of see behind the curtain and see how the sausage is made. We can have a conversation like this and you can go, wow, I am fascinated by the thought process that goes into this and the intelligence it takes and the athleticism it takes and the acting skills that are required for the drama that they're putting up for us. And when you do that, you recognize and you realize that much like an actor, much like a magician, I'm not trying to confuse or convince the gullible. I'm trying to entertain and impress the intellectual. And I think that's what's fascinating about where we see the UFO landscape going now, is it was easy for many years and many decades to diminish people who believed in such a thing or knew that they had seen something, whether they could explain it or not, as just being kooks, crazies, or intellectual imbeciles. Well, now when you have people that are coming on shows like yours, Ryan, or a Micah Hanks, or you speak to some of these people like a Bob Lazar or anybody like that, you start having these conversations. When Joe Rogan can have a guest like that on his podcast and have a long-form conversation, you can't just diminish that out of hand and dismiss that as being, this guy is not intelligent, he's not well-read, he's not articulate. No, he's all those things, and yet he still believes. That's fascinating.
It is. Yeah, that want to believe is always there, whether it's UFOs or wrestling. And I love that you say intellectuals, because I think the wrestling business truly changed when they finally, pronounce, like, we are entertainment and we want to take you guys along for the ride. No more thinking you're stupid out there in the audience. Like, if you want to stick with us on that journey, do it. And I mean, look at where the business went after that happened. Clearly, people wanted to continue taking that journey, even knowing full well that that it wasn't quote unquote real, which is, I know a term that wrestlers don't like to hear because it is pretty damn real.
Right. Well, real is relative because it is so physical and physically demanding, and that's the reason why wrestlers will take exception to it. But at the same time, the entertainment aspect of it and recognizing it as that and being predetermined doesn't bother me or offend me because I can tell you can take a trip right now to Las Vegas and there's no shortage of magicians. Now, I don't believe that they really have some kind of magical powers. And I also don't need them to show me at the end of the night how they did each trick for me to go in and enjoy the skill that has to go into them taking the time there to learn their craft in such a way that it causes me to have that seed of doubt going, did I really see what I just saw there? And it's amazing to me. It's very, very, very powerful.
It is. It is. Well, last kind of wrestling question for you, because I know we've got a whole second act to this play you and I are writing tonight.
Sure.
But I got to ask, brother, and this might be putting you on the spot a little bit, but do you have, like, in your entire career, do you have a favorite match or, like, one of your most memorable matches or moments out on the road, or maybe one of both? Anything really stick out to you? I love hearing those stories.
Yeah. I have a couple. The first one is probably the third tier of the three tiers I mentioned earlier. My first big debut that I had on a Saturday night, which was more awkward than it was anything else because I didn't know what to expect, and it happened so quickly. It was a blur. And then you had the life career-changing moment for me when I wrestled Billy Kidman, which was my first live Nitro. And then one of my most memorable matches where I really felt like I was coming into my own and being utilized was my very first pay-per-view. And I was the first match out at Halloween Havoc in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand against Disco Inferno for the Cruiserweight title. And that was so big because there was a build up to it. There was a storyline to it. I had a t-shirt made that said Viva Lash Vegas, and I was referring to the Cruiserweight title as the Cajun weight title. And we did this whole storyline behind it. It was so cool to be involved in that. So that was very meaningful and impactful to me. And then another big moment for me that stood out, always will, even though it didn't last very long, was I won the tag team titles with Chavo Guerrero when we were in the Misfits in Action in Australia. And we reigned as tag team champions for all of 30 seconds before we lost the titles again immediately after we won them. But we had our 30 seconds, man.
That's wrestling world. That's the business for you, right?
That's wrestling. That's right.
So that was Ryan talking to Lash LeRoux. How great is that guy? That a fantastic interview. A couple of things that was so, and he offered such great insight. He talks about the psychology of wrestling, what it's like telling a story in the ring. Again, he's so complimentary of you, just a nice, humble guy. And a couple things that blew my mind. He did motion capture for, I believe, he didn't say the name of the game, but I looked up the first time EA Sports did a game with WCW, and it was WCW Mayhem, which I definitely played when it was out, even though it's got my least favorite person on the cover. I'll let you guess who. And it's really a fascinating interview because to just hear his story about just kind of like proving his worth, which is really exciting, and kind of walking into this on accident, just thinking like, oh, this might be fun. And then getting, a good amount of a career out of it is really impressive and really exciting. He also revealed he trained at the Powerhouse, the WCW training ground. And he said there was a weight limit. It was like you had to be at least 200 pounds and be at least 5'10", which I thought was kind of wild. It makes sense. But it's so funny to me that was implemented, or that was a part of it. And the stories about having to do hundreds of squats, like I've heard stuff like that before, that it's always funny to me / impressive that like any training story you hear about wrestlers in Tough Enough or like any of this kind of stuff, it's always cardio. It's real cardio heavy.
Right.
They're just like, we got to make sure that you can go and go and go and go and go and not puke. Because not as successfully as Lash LeRoux, but I was an amateur wrestler in high school for 1 year. First time this has ever been talked about on the show. I had a varsity letter, even though I had to stop about halfway through the season because I was throwing up and they thought I might have had concussion syndromes. But That was most of our practices was just cardio. And we used to have to do something where somebody would get all fours. And I think they were just called spins, but you would basically press your chest to their back and spin around and spin and spin and spin and keep pushing yourself and spin and just keep going. Like,
it's making me queasy.
Dude, it was a lot.
Right
It's a lot. It's a lot. And I think I think he said as much. It adds to his worth because he was not only able to handle that cardio because he was an athlete, like he said, he was able to do the string or the chain wrestling that he talks about, like a la Dean Malenko, as he says. So just Lash, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I would love to have him back on the show at some point, and I can gnaw on his ear a little bit. There's probably a better way to say that. But you know my point. Lash, please ignore that part and maybe come back on so I can ask you some other questions.
I thought it'd be cool if we actually did some match commentaries for Lash.
I think that's a great idea. I'm very excited about that because
so
I definitely remember him, but I can't tell you the last time that I watched one of his matches. So we'll be dropping that in the feed on Friday, a couple days after this. So yeah, check that out. We're going to talk some Lash LeRoux because he was so wonderful and kind to give us some of his time. Well, let's tidy up, shall we? Ryan, where you got anything coming up? Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to tell the folks about?
Absolutely. I'm actually, as of this recording, I'm flying back home to old Scotland from
What's your flight? What's your flight number?
My flight number. Let me double check that. I'll also give you my debit card number.
Yeah. What gate are you arriving at? And at what time? This will actually come out after you've already flown, so it's safe to share that information.
That is true. Hello, future Ryan and Andrew.
Please don't share that information.
Yeah. So I'll be finally going back home. I've been in New Scotland, Nova Scotia, for about a month now, filming for a project that everyone will see soon. So super excited for that. Be on the lookout for more news on a show called Haunted in the very near future. And other than that, man, Somewhere in the Skies is every Monday. I am cranking out UFO episodes just as much as Somewhere in the Ring now. So staying busy. Can't wait to go home. And I can't wait for Backlash, to be honest. I'm planning on hopefully going.
Really? I knew Clash of the Castle was happening, but not Backlash. That's great.
It's just a hop, skip, and a jump over from Scotland.
Sure. So
why not? We have a wrestling podcast. Let's take advantage.
Do it. Especially those European dates. It's pretty rad that they keep doing that.
Yeah.
I am very excited about that because I think it's going to be on at like 1 PM, so I can watch it while my kids are napping. So very exciting stuff.
Yeah. How about you?
Let's see. I've got mainly Random Access Theater, a company I write for somewhat regularly in New York City. It opened a theater space. They're having a space, and their opening weekend of shows will be May 3rd through May 5th. And they will be doing their Drunk Texts series. So it is an adults only. Older people, kids can come too. You don't have to drink, but the people in the show will be drinking, and we'll be playing drinking games, reading some Shakespearean Star Wars scripts that I wrote. The first night, May the 3rd, will be A Hope Renewed, which is A New Hope. And I won't be performing in that one, but plenty of very talented people will be. And I will be performing on May the 4th for The Empire Doth Protest, which I also wrote, which is Empire Strikes Back. And I will be playing Han Solo, which is very exciting. I've gotten to do that before. It's a lot of fun. It's real silly. I do wear a wig. So if you're in the New York area, please come join us. Come have some fun. It's the opening weekend. And then I think it's a 9:00 show the first night, 7 p.m. Maybe 9:30 the first night, 7 p.m. the next night. And then Sunday, they are having a brunch show doing the prequels, which I did not write, but Mike Gregoric, one of the founders, did. It's awesome stuff. It's a lot of fun. Look it up. Look up Random Access Theater. Look up The Rat NYC. They're great people. They're doing great stuff, and we would love to see you there.
That's awesome, man. I wish I could make it. You're going up against Backlash. Did you know that?
On May 4th, really?
May 4th, yeah.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it'll be later at night, too. Oh, thank God. Man, that's going to be a full day. That'll be really exciting.
You're going to be a busy little boy.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
I don't know what that was. Have no idea where that came from.
Oh, no. But anyway, right. So for all of you folks listening, as always, please like, rate, subscribe, leave us a review. We really, really appreciate that. And it helps with the visibility. We've gotten some great reviews lately. So let's keep them coming. Head to patreon.com/somewhere in the ring and join our Patreon like John K and Paul K, who we greatly appreciate. And just stay tuned. Oh, also, well, this would be a little late, but you head to TeePublic. If you head to our TeePublic store, we've got some merch. We got some shirts. You can get our faces on a mug. There's lots of good options. So check that out. Keep listening and keep watching wrestling, Dag nabbit, and join us somewhere in the ring. Ryan, hit that bell.
Ooh, I get to do it this time? All right.
Yeah, please. Yeah,
Here we go.
Oh, gee. Oh boy, Ryan,
Did it
it's
work?
not a real. It's not a real bell, my friend. I don't unless. Or are you gonna put that noise in afterwards?
I don't know. It sounds
maybe okay.
Kind of sounds like a TIE fighter for some reason. I think I picked the wrong audio clip. Sorry.
Oh man. We'll try again next time. Thanks, everybody.
This has been Somewhere in the Ring. Thank you for listening. Subscribe wherever you get your pods, and be sure to rate and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever possible. We'll see you again soon, somewhere in the ring.